Hey guys, OGalbina here, bringing you guys another Twitter discussion video. Today, I wanted to talk about the terrestrial mechanic in Draft League. I kind of put out a little community post about it a few days ago, but it's been out for a little bit, and I feel like we're kind of starting to settle into figuring out what's good right now, what's not good, things like that. The best ways to, utilize Tera and Draft and rulings on it and things like that. So I wanted to ask you guys up to this point what your favorite / what you think the best Tera captains are right now in the Draft League format. Now, this is assuming that they can be any typing, Tera into any typing, and Tera Blast is allowed. So I figured this would be a pretty fun one. If you guys do enjoy today's Twitter question, be sure to drop a like on the video, as well as subscribe if you're new. We're on our way to 2,000 subs, and I would really appreciate it if you help us out along that journey. And also, go ahead and comment down below, 1, what your favorite Tera captain is, or what you think the best is, and why. And then 2, any ideas you have for future Twitter questions. The reason I haven't been doing these as much lately is because I feel like I've covered a ton of things in our Twitter questions, which you can check out with the playlist that's, this is attached to and linked in the description, all that stuff. So I'm running dry on the questions and things like that. So if you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Yeah. Okay. With that being said, I'm not going to talk about mine because I feel like mine are covered in these. So we'll go ahead and just jump on into the first one, which is going to be from Lars. He said, time for... So he did some others earlier, which we'll get to. But in general, he said, I get to play with those play against. Espathra has been dangerous, has some dangerous sets when you don't have to draft a specific Tera type. Funny story, I still use T-Tars in a Espathra check, even with Tera fighting, and it didn't do nearly enough to KO. That's just T-Tar things. You're not killing it with a special move, especially if it's only base 80 power and you're, just an Espathra or something like that. But Espathra has shown to be an incredible Tera captain, banned in some leagues and allowed in others. I don't think it's bannable in draft when you know that it can Tera, and you're specifically building for it. But it's probably one of the biggest noob killers in the game right now, in the sense that it really, really beats down new players, and it's also one of the fastest snowball mons in the game right now. It and Quackleval, at least in this Paldea Dex format, seem to be the biggest snowball, oh no, this is getting out of hand kind of Pokemon. Another one that comes to mind with that is like Gen 7 Superior or something like that, which could get out of hand with Contrary Boost. Same thing with Espathra, by just existing it basically boosts up. You can go very, very bulky on, Calm Mind speed boost variants, because you're not really looking to do immediate damage anyways. You might as well, maximize that bulk and try and get up, multiple Calm Minds opposed to just that one. So Tera Espathra has shown to be a big, big, big threat right now. So definitely a fair answer. It's a mon I definitely want to try myself too. I feel like it's very one note and very gimmicky, but its results have obviously shown thus far in the generation. It's definitely really, really scary to a lot of players. Next up, we have J-Bear here saying Chen Pao and Dragonite are both insane. Volcarona, Espathra, and Skeledirge are also demons. We'll just talk about the first two because I know the other ones are all covered in future, tweets and things like that. But Qianpao and Dragonite were actually my answers as well. I have personally loved using Qianpao as a Tera captain in my Smog tour. I thought it was incredible, especially when I could Tera in any type. I brought Ground, I brought Electric, and then the dual stabs are just incredible. Like a Tera Dark Banded Crunch has no counterplay, like just none, especially when, most things that are resisting dark probably aren't resisting ice. And even Pokemon that do, like things like Azumarill and things like Klefki and like, these cool dual typings that can resist your dual stabs, they get chipped down so fast just because you're so unbelievably strong. If they're not like rest variants, then they just don't check you, which is pretty nuts. And obviously if you're free Tera, you can Tera Fire, Electric, Poison, Ground is one I've seen. I've even seen Tera Water, Qianpao, just because it allows it to set up a little bit better with, a better defensive typing and more neutral matchups. And, the water coverage was nice for, maybe a Paldean Tauros or something of the sort. So, I definitely think Espathra, we just talked about that. Qianpao is an incredible Tera captain, but, the answer's got to be Dragonite, right? For the objective best terrestrial captain. If you can Tera your Dragonite into anything, it is incredible. I know we all think of, like, the E-Speed, either Bandit or DD sets with Tera Normal, but in the hands of a good builder, a Tera All Dragonite is a monster. Whether it be for those DD sets with normal Dragon flying, like it stabs plus the E-Speed, Fire is great. What do you call it? Ground is great. I'm trying to think of other solid typings. It's crazy because it has the coverage to really run anything, whether that be water, grass, electric. I've seen Fairy a bunch, and it doesn't have to be on DD sets. It can be on specially offensive sets. I've seen Terraflying Hurricane just absolutely rip through teams. I've just seen special sets in general rip through teams, or just really bulky, obnoxious ones. I know, so Amel and APA Classic, which is a league I'm going to upload a movie of here soon, where we didn't actually play, me and Amel, but Amel had Dragonite, and it was where he drafted Tera types, because it was one of the early leagues of the gen. He picked Tera Water instead of Tera Normal, and everybody's like, what the hell? But he used Dragonite phenomenally in a defensive role the entire season, and he was still good offensively, and he could Tera Water and like Waterfall, but he was bringing like Fire Spin sets and, really taking advantage of that multi-scale. I also saw a Smog Tour game where Tera Water Dragonite pulled up on a Sun team with Sub DD Roost Waterfall and 6-0'd on lead. I think that Dragonite's bulk plus being able to pick what typing it is and getting rid of that crippling 4x ice weakness is so good in a draft format. And I honestly do think that Dragonite should be banned from tearing if it's a Tera all league. Like, if you can tear into any typing, I do not think Dragonite should be allowed to tear. I think it is far and above the best Pokemon that takes advantage of the mechanic for sure. All right, next up we have Lucas saying, Wo Chen, Tera Poison makes it an amazing wall. Everyone talking about Boy Bad, now it's his time to shine. Wo Chen is, we do like Fuzzy Snail, Wo Chen moment, live Wo Chen reaction, all the funny memes that have spawned from them on. I do think that it's pretty solid, and especially like if you're tearing it, it gets rid of that really bad defensive typing, right, in Grass and Dark, especially in a draft format where there's U-turn everywhere. Draft League player love clicking U-turn. Like, it's a big thing when it comes to the draft format in particular, so being able to shed that is nice. My issue in general with like more defensive Tera options though, is that yeah, you're making your Wo Chen better, but then there's something in the back on your team that probably appreciates the Tera more, that can put on more offensive pressure. Now, I know I just talked about Dragonite being more defensive, but I think or having defensive options, I think that's just kind of more so better in the sense that when Dragonite is defensive, it can catch people off guard because it's so good offensively. You're not really tearing your Wo Chen to be offensive. Now, I have seen Amel bring offensive Wo Chen in like tour games and stuff like that already, but other than him, I haven't seen too many people pulling off the offensive Lee Storm Wo Chen, and it just doesn't have the speed tier to do so. So it's a good defensive option. I do agree if you get like 2 Tera captains, a low tier Tera Wo Chen is a great option. Another one that I love, I've been tearing in all my leagues that allow like 2 captains, 1 low tier, 1 high tier. I've been tearing the hell out of my Dunsparce and making him a fairy type and, a steel type and all these cool different things. So defensive options are good from a Terramon if it's not your only Tera, is how I see it, Okay. Next up, we have the Hawaiian Shaman here saying, objectively, I say the best is Dragonite, but Tera Champao and Chiyu are demons. However, my first personal favorite has been Tera Lycanroc Dusk, because banded fighting Tough Claws CC on Lycanroc Dusk goes crazy. I haven't thought about that, and I've actually drafted Lycanroc Dusk recently in Classic. I used it for the whole season. It was not my Tera captain, but that probably would have been a really cool option. I mean, it already feels like with the Tough Claws boost that CC is basically stabbed from Lycanroc Dusk. It's just faster, frailer Terrakion, in my opinion, with, strong priority. Honestly, I like it more than Terrakion, but that might be a discussion for a different day. But I with a Tera boost, I mean, what really switches into that CC plus Stone Edge combination? I mean, unless your name is Aegislash and you don't take any drill runs or crunches or anything like that, it's not looking good for you. Or I guess like a Goldango, but same thing, like Life Orb Crunch is gonna rip through you. You don't even have to be banded, I don't think. I think just like Life Orb is just an absolute nuke. So I think that's a really cool option. Tera Chiyu is obviously a pretty stereotypical one. Like that one's a monster, whether it be dual. I mean, you guys saw my Smog Tour game that should have went up yesterday or the day before, depending on when I'm deciding to upload this. Tera Chiyu can be really scary, and since its stabs are just like overwhelming if you can Tera into them, and a lot of teams just don't have an answer to the dual stabs of Fire and Dark. The fact that you can like Tera and like 2 Akio Blissies and Pexes, and like even without Sun sometimes, but definitely with Sun for like Blissey, but you can 2 Akio Pex like without Sun and things like that with Fire moves. But obviously you have the Dark Pulse option as well. Is pretty darn scary in my opinion. Like it's a really, really, really strong Pokemon, and giving it the option to boost up its stabs or gain a nice defensive typing, or getting like that weird niche coverage move that you need, whether it be Electric Grass, Poison, or Water, like we saw as a better defensive typing on like a Nasty Plot set in that game before, because I'm assuming that's what it probably was, some kind of Nasty Plot variant. But yeah, it's an incredible Pokemon. So I definitely think that Tera is really good on it. It's a mod I really want to try personally. So all right, next up we have Thriller saying, personally I have to say this because of a speed turbo. Honestly, Iron Moth losing the quad weakness, and then it's with its move ball plus Terra Blast makes it so hard to switch into. I agree. I'm playing in another Showdown League that I just started recently, in Trick House, where I have Tera Iron Moth. I saw it popping off on the tour, the Smog Tour. Darkrai used it really well, in particular with his like double moth team. A bunch of Tera Iron Moth teams made brackets and things like that and performed really well. And it really is an incredible Pokemon. Being able to lose that fire poison typing is so nice, whether it be into grass or water is what I've seen for the most part. I've seen a lot of Tera Water and a lot of Tera Fairy. Tera Fairy is great for boosting up your Dazzling Gleams. Tera Water with Tera Blast is great for pushing past a lot of different checks to you and things like that. Really, Water and Fairy is incredible. You can Agility, you can Fire Dance up and kind of steamroll your opponents and overwhelm them that way. So I actually think that Iron Moth is a really incredible Tera captain. And unless you have like a top 5 Mon that you want to Tera, your Iron Moth should always be Tera. Now, in Smog Tour, I did Champao, and I personally do think Champao is a little bit better personally, just because it's so goddamn strong. But there's an argument to be made for doing Iron Moth there, because Champao can function very well outside of tearing, and Iron Moth becomes infinitely better when you can tear it. And I liked it without tearing it, and what do you call it? In the Smog Tour. So I can only imagine using it for a full season. I mean, even in my first week, I think I didn't sweep with it, but it did so well in my first matchup where we won 5-0. So yeah. Next up, we have Dashing Sceptile here saying, my favorite Tera captain to use is Tera Toxtricity. Tera Normal Boom Burst hits so hard. Currently in Draft League is my number 2 kill leader for Generation I was 16-3. Palafin is a close second of mine. Both great ones. Tera Tox is one that so many people were excited for, even leading into Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet, before we even do like the actual calcs and how the mechanic worked, just because the idea of Tera Normaling Boom Burst is incredible. Boom Burst basically worked as a third stab on Tox before, and it was often stronger than your stabs with the Punk Rock ability. Now being able to change into that normal typing just makes it an absolute nuke. If you are not immune or a ridiculously bulky Steel type or Rock type, you do not take Tera Normal Boom Burst, and even then you might not. It's really strong, and on top of that you have to account for random Sludge Waves, Overdrive, Shift Gear variants, Volt switching out, things like that. Like it's a very strong Pokemon. The thing with Toxo, and the reason why that's not like broken or anything like that, despite it like really almost OHKOing the entire game, is its speed tier is so bad. Normal does take away its ground weakness, but it doesn't take away the fact that you're still probably getting OHKO by Earthquake, if that makes any sense. It's not a very bulky Pokemon, so it's very exploitable, and Scarf sets aren't that good, in my opinion, just because it's very tough to lock. I love going like Life Orb, or even Specs just as a nuke, because Resist don't really matter when you're a Toxtricity with a Specs, but and Life Orb obviously wears you down a little bit, so Specs might be a little better sometimes. Scarf is a bit meh, so you're liable to get overwhelmed and things like that. Next up, we have Marcus saying, CB Marcus saying Tera Psychic Lele, which afterwards I think he said obviously it's not in Paldeodex, but fingers crossed it makes a return eventually. For now, Forever Clan Lives and Nat Dex. It definitely does look like a fun Pokemon. Like a really fun Pokemon. Again, just having that strong stab option and just multiplying it by the nth degree, right? And again, on top of that, if it's a free Tera format, being able to Tera Fairy, maybe Tera Fire, Tera Ground, like giving yourself that perfect Psychic Fire and Fairy coverage seems really scary, or even Ground, same thing. With that Tera Blast is going to give you a lot of damage output, or even Tera Fighting Focus Blast. Like there's a lot of options with Lele, where if you give that stab boost, I think it really does kind of set it over the top as like a premier top tier wall breaker. Like a really good one. Oh, and we forgot to mention Palafin. Palafin's incredible. Another Mon that's like with free Tera is really good in a creative player's hands, whether it be a Tera Grass or Electric. I've seen Tera Dark before, or even just Tera Water into a team that has flimsy water resist. Like you Tera Water Wave Crash, you're killing something. There's nothing that switches in, and then that banded Tera Water Jet Punch. Oh, mwah, chef's kiss. I know Hayes has actually been using Tera Palafin incredibly in a Showdown League that he's in, my buddy Hayes. So it's obviously a great Pokemon. Okay, next up we have Sventhun here saying Skeledirge hands down. Makes it able to check your opponent's most scary Mon, or possibly half their team, and just sweep through. I do agree. I've also seen this Mon, especially in the Smog Tour, popping. I know CBB was using it very well, and he had a team with Champao, and he elected to Tera his Skeledirge, and at first, I won't lie, I looked at it and I was like, I don't know about that. But he has really been playing. He played really well in the tournament, and I was watching his games a lot. And like the ability to change your typing into anything makes Skeledirge such a good defensive check to whatever you're scared of. It could be a Pokemon that's, an absolute demon in your team, maybe a setup threat that, you wouldn't be able to stop with an unaware Skeledirge just because of the fact that you're weak to it. But then you Tera Fairy, you Tera Water, you Tera Steel, or whatever it might be, and you're an absolute nuisance, and it is so tough to deal with. There's not really much in the game that OHKOs it too, is what I've noticed. Even special moves, even if it's physically defensive and it's a special attack that's super effective, if it's not a stab or like boosting item or something like that, it's really OHKOing the Skeledirge. And plus, if you Tera into like a water type or steel type or whatever it might be, and you lose that rocks weakness, it's a really clutch aspect of if you think you can get that Tera off early or get rid of rocks until you come in, you're not weak to rocks anymore. So you can rock out with leftovers and really, really become almost unkillable. Like, it's a really good Pokemon. So yeah, I definitely agree. I think Skeledirge is the one exception to like defensive Tera over offensive Tera, in my opinion. Like, I think it's pretty incredible. Next up, we have Gohan here saying Dragonite, Palafin, Chimpower are the most broken, which we've already talked about. But then we have some other ones, some of which we talked about in Skeledirge and Spathra, but Volcarona and Annihilate. And Volcarona is another one, a lot like Iron Moth, where like losing that 4 times weakness and losing that fire typing and things like that sometimes, and especially that bug typing, which isn't very good defensively, it was really, really nice. We've seen Tera Grass and Tera Water Volcarona pop off recently, like do really well. Tera Fairy has been incredible, or I've even seen a game recently in Smog Tour where like Tera Bug did really, really well because the opponent's team did not have a bug resist and they were able to Tera into a bug type and just click Bug Buzz the entire game. So Tera Volk is a phenomenal setup sweeper option, and same thing with Annihilate. And it's kind of like the middle ground between Skeledirge and like a more offensive threat, in the sense that like when you Tera your Annihilate into a water type, fairy type, whatever it might be, you take hits for days, right? Annihilate is insanely bulky, especially when spec'd into its bulk. You guys saw it when I used it in BBR. It wasn't even my Tera Captain, which I actually low-key regret. I think I would probably make my Tera Captain over Moon at this point, too. I don't know, maybe I'm tripping. Maybe I shouldn't use Moon well enough, but I feel like Moon's a better facilitator for something like Annihilate, but it's another discussion. But Annihilate tearing into a water, fairy, steel, typing, it's going to take the hits that it normally wouldn't have taken before, and it's going to take them very well. Power up those Rage Fists, start bulking up, and start doing some damn damage. Like, it's a very, very scary Pokemon, and I'd say borderline like a top 5 Tera Captain. Like, it's really, really obnoxious, but it's still going to have increasing damage output, and I guess that's why Skeledirge is so good too, which we didn't talk about. Like, Torch Song just really snowballing. There's a lot of snowball mons that were introduced in Generation 9. Torch Song really just snowballing, and Rage Fist and Bulk Up really just snowballing through teams. They get very overwhelming and oppressive throughout the course of the game, and if we can, swap our type at will and things like that, things can get pretty crazy pretty quick. Alright, next up we have Pokemon Trainer Orange saying Spectrier. While it isn't in Wi-Fi current Paldia, I've used it and locked into the Tera Fairy in 9 games. It's gone 17-5 for me. Whew! Fun to build with, and I only got it for 15 points. That's crazy that you got a Tera Spec for 15, because I've seen it banned in most places, right? Tera Fairy is a great option. I got Draining Kiss this gen, for those of you who don't know, which is an incredible tool for Spectrier. I actually think of Spectrier, I went from being a Spectre hater last gen, not liking it at all, to saying, man, this is an incredible Pokemon, because now it can push past dark types. It could always kind of bully normals and, whittle them down with Will-O-Wisp and things like that. But now, especially with that Draining Kiss, recovering its own health and breaking through those dark types, it has become an absolute monster, and again, a phenomenal snowball mon. And if you're locked into Tera Fairy, you can go with Tera Fairy Draining Kisses and get an amazing defensive typing, by the way, but also the ability Free Tera, if you can do that, and tearing into a fighting type, and being able to kill 2 birds, 1 stone with Tera Blast and things like that. So Spectrier is a phenomenal Tera Captain, and I think borderline bannable from holding the Tera, or being a Tera Captain, you know what I mean? So yeah. Next up, we have Sandy Simmies here saying this is a submission and a half. We have Sandy Simmies saying haven't used it, but Go-Go looks like it'd be a great Tera Captain. If we need another special move to boost its special attack stat is big for it. Go-Go? Otherwise, Harryon will be a fantastic Terramon that I've actually used. I like the low tier, shoutouts here. I think the low tier shoutouts are really cool here. I don't know about Go-Go. Just Go-Go is not a very good Pokemon, so tearing it seems like a waste because it also means you drafted Go-Go. Maybe I need to see some replays. Simmies, I'm gonna need you to draft Go-Go, right? I'm gonna need you to prove me wrong. I'm gonna need you to draft Go-Go and tear it and show me the truth, because I'm failing to pick it up how it would be good. Maybe with like bulk up sets and things like that, it could be solid if it gets a better defensive type than Grass, but Grass also works a lot of the time, so I don't know. Hariyama seems like a cool one. I've seen Tera Iron Hands be incredible before. That's not in this, obviously, and Iron Hands obviously better as a Pokemon, but I'm a huge Hariyama advocate. I love it as a low tier fighting, as an AV Mon, as a status absorber, as a Trick Room breaker, as even like great with an Assault Vest too. Like it's a really good, and a guts just monster too. So Hariyama is definitely a very, very fantastic Pokemon. I think again, if you have that low tier Tera option, it can be really good and it can flip some matchups on its head. And that's just Tera in general. But yeah. Next up we have The Pickle Nugget here saying, I love Tera Belly Bolt. It's a secondary low tier Tera Captain. Look at the low tier shoutouts. It's so bulky and lives for so long. For higher tier ones, ones that you don't see regularly, Chiyu might be up there with one of the best. It just wants to Scarf or Specs Tera. And Tera loves to come on. That's, again, we talked about Chiyu, incredible choice for a top tier one, but I like the Belly Bolt shout out because I think it has a great defensive spec, especially with Slag Off. And if you Tera Blast, it can be really annoying. I think like Tera Water can be incredible on it. Again, it's incredibly bulky, and it can really last a long time with like Slack Off and things like that. You can Tera Water, you can Tera Ground, you can Tera Grass is another option. You can Tera Steel, and you know the Tera Blast coverage on top of it's very bad coverage, which is kind of what holds it back right now. Can be really solid. So I do think that like if you do get that secondary low tier Tera Captain option, Belly Bolt doesn't seem like too bad of an idea. Okay. Next up, we have, I'm going to say NFQ because I don't know how to say the other one. They've gone in a couple times on these threads, though, which I appreciate. And they say Tera Skeledirge, and they kind of just reiterate what we were saying earlier, right? Super helpful to take the other brokens defensively. Unaware, Slack Off, and Positive type advantage. Dirge is basically a Giga Check to anything in the tier that you want. And I do think that is incredibly valuable, especially because on top of that, it can really snowball and be annoying, spread Wisps and Yawns, and Slack Off, and Torsong, and Hex, and Shadow Ball, and even Earth Power if you want to. And Tera Blast, if you want that fairy coverage and you're a fairy type. So, chef's kiss, great Pokemon. Okay, next up we have Sadawudo saying, I've only had the chance to use Hisuian Gujo, but it's been pretty fun. Ooh, a Hisuian Mon. Since it has so much coverage and great bulk, I can usually find good offensive/defensive Tera options, which have better recovery, but still hard to break nonetheless. I think that's definitely fair. I think regular Gujo could, you can make a case for that guy as well. Whether it be one of your stab typings and just becoming a pure steel type or a pure dragon type, or one of, a defensive typing or one of your coverage options and going Assault Vest with good wish support, or going Rest Talk or something of the sorts. I could definitely see Hisuian Gujo being a good lower tier option if you are kind of locked into that, but yeah. Next up, we have Shuckle King here saying, if there's no Fluttermane or Dragapult, then Dragonite is the best. Which, we've already talked about Dragonite, but I do want to mention Fluttermane, obviously. I didn't say it in mine because I'm assuming it's banned, as it should be, to be completely honest. But Pult, I kind of completely glanced over, because I'm also typically seeing it banned everywhere upcoming now too, but I've been using Tera Dragapult in a classic season, which I will be uploading a movie for here this week-ish, here soon. Next week, actually, it'll be when it probably gets uploaded either Tuesday or Thursday. And I was locked into one type. I was only allowed to Tera Ghost, and man, oh man, you thought this Pokemon was broken in Gen 8? Whew! It's an incredible one. Tera allows it to go physical a lot more, which I think is a really valuable tool, allowing it to be that mixed or physical or special attacker, which makes it so much harder to build for. I think Choice Band, Tera Ghost, like Tera Blast sets are just, they're so hard to switch into. Again, you can go Dragon Dance now and like actually viably win the game with DD sets, which is awesome, because I think that was like one thing that Pult really struggled with was its physical sets, even though it's more strong physically. So I really like the aspect of Tera Blasting, Tera Ghosting, and just ripping through a team. So yeah, Pulse is definitely up there, and it should probably be banned as well. It's definitely at least top 3 out of the Pokemon we've mentioned. Next up, we have Lars here saying, I absolutely loved seeing Basculegion destroy everyone. That's without last respects, and only under rain. Basculegion is a very interesting Pokemon. I think this thing's going to be an absolute monster here in this generation when it gets allowed, whether you ban last respects or not. Under rain, this thing is going to be very strong. Water Ghost is incredibly powerful. It has good coverage, and again, if we're allowing that last respects and we let the rain get up, if we double our speed, there's not much that switches in, and it's not like Houndstone, where Houndstone can't really overwhelm normal types as well, even though it does have body press. It's just not the strongest thing in the world. Basculegion can overwhelm a good normal type. I actually don't know what's going to switch into water plus last respect, so it's probably going to be banned, to be completely honest. At least the move, in my opinion, it should be. So yeah, definitely a really incredible Pokemon. I'm really excited to see how that mon shapes out. Next up here, we have Banette Bandit saying, I've only used Noivern so far, but most underrated is any low-tier Magnet Pokemon, which is definitely an interesting idea, right? Now, Noivern is cool. You could, like, Tera Normal Boom Burst with, like, Throat Spray and just blah. But yeah, it basically makes it, like, a faster, more budget, not as strong Toxtricity, but it's definitely a really good sweeping option, in my opinion. Probably a little bit better than Tox when it comes to the sweeping aspect, because you're going to have to shift gear and then Boom Burst when it comes to Tox. But the Magnapole thing is definitely really interesting, really allowing you to, again, flip some matchups on the head, maybe Tera Firing, maybe Tera Grounding, things like that, to where, because a lot of these Magnapole Pokemon, they have a really big crippling weakness to ground, and a lot of Steel-type Pokemon have ground coverage. So now you're not going to be forced into weird Scarf sets, weird Air Balloon sets. You can go, like, just normal, items that you typically would want, but then just Tera into an advantageous type, and then trap them, and obviously that could be really cool. Now, obviously, in Draft, I don't think Magnapole is good, because if I have a Celesteal and you have an Alolan Golem, and I know I cannot let my Celesteal get trapped, I'm just going to run Shed Shell. I'm probably not even going to mess around with Con. I'm probably just going to run Shed Shell and be able to get out of there because my Celesteal is important. So Magnapole mons in general in Draft aren't as good, but I do think that's a very interesting idea and can definitely make them better, if that makes any sense. Next up, we have JBeast111 here saying, Roaring Moon and Annihilate have been solid for me. Almost impossible to stop Roaring Moon if your team can't prevent it from running Roost. So I have used both of these Pokemon. I haven't used Tera Annihilate, but I've used Tera Roaring Moon in BBR, and I think I would agree. I think it's a really, really incredible Tera Pokemon. I think the rule set that we used in BBR, where I could only Tera into one type, really limited it to like Choice Band and Choice Scarf sets because it wasn't as good on DD. But I think the idea of like being able to Tera Dark, Tera Steel, or Tera Flying makes it really, really so much scarier. And like you're gonna want to like Tera Steel and like Tera Flying especially on like DD variants, booster energy sets, and things like that. Whereas Tera Dark Crunch is like more so meant to overload, force switches, get you turns out into your opposing Pokemon. So I think the way I use Moon is going to be different than the way a lot of people have used Moon. I even used it like pretty defensively with like Assault Vest in some matchups and things like that. I think I brought AV 3 times because of the 3 Chi-Yus we played. But it does have great bulk, which kind of shows by me bringing AV to check Chi-Yu very well. So yeah, I think that's definitely a fair assessment. Roaring Moon looks pretty incredible, and we already talked about Annihilate. Schmo here says, Terrifying Espathra was really nice for Jam-Pao, Tinglu, and Roaring Moon. We did talk about this guy a little bit earlier on. Espathra is definitely an incredible Terra Captain. Skeletor's most fun, Dragonite is best. Again, valid takes. Then we have Hunby here saying Avalugg, which is an interesting, I don't know if this is a Del burner. I wouldn't recommend tearing your Avalugg. I wouldn't recommend drafting it, to be completely honest, but I'm a bit of an Avalugg hater. Anytime I've drafted it, it just either sucks momentum after it checks the one thing it's supposed to check and kind of just puts you in a worse spot overall, or it doesn't do anything and you never bring it. So I don't know. I feel like you could ask Kurt too. Kurt had an Avalugg on his Smog Tour team, and again, he's top 16 right now. I don't think he's brought that shit once because it's not very good. Then we have Tera Exploud here, and again, a really cool option. It's cool to see all these Tera Boom Burst Pokemon really taking advantage of that ridiculously strong no drawback move, and Exploud is definitely one of them. It's even a little bit of overkill, I think, but again, what really holds back Exploud, even more so than Tox, is its terrible speed tier. So that's not going to help it in this sense very well, because I feel like Exploud kind of already either O-code or 2-KO'd everything, but now it does so more, and maybe it grabs more O-codes, but it's still an Exploud, if that makes any sense. So I definitely think it's really cool. And again, low tier option, very sick. And it's cool to see it OHKO and Ursaluna. For those of you who haven't used or played Ursaluna yet, there's not shit that OHKOs Ursaluna. So like, that's a really cool thing to see. You typically do not see that thing get OHKO'd. I used it recently in a league, and oh my goodness, that Pokemon is bulky. Like, it is ridiculously bulky. And that's a neutral attack, KOing it after a resisted rock. So yeah, and lastly, we have Didi here saying, only Gen 9 league I've completed yet is Open Tera Ubers, but I won 2 weeks in a row due to Tera Clodsire. Don't know how it held up as a Tera captain, but the defensive abilities and base stats has made it able to check almost any special attacker. Claude God the GOAT. I know most teams likely prefer Tera offensive Tera captains. I can't read, I'm sorry guys. But on a semi-stall build like mine, Tera Claude is insanely valuable and probably being used 4 or 5 out of the 9 weeks. So I have many less to play. That's honestly fair. And I guess that's something I didn't really mention earlier when I talked about defensive options. If you're playing a more defensive playstyle and you're playing balance, semi-stall, stall, you're obviously going to be tearing something more defensive. And unaware Pokemon like Skeletors, like Clodsire, can be really, really solid with that option. Again, this allows it to check whatever he needs it to check. Whether it be, like, I know in OU, Tera Dark Clodsire was like the Espathra check because it couldn't break through it with stored power, and then it didn't have anything else to hit it. Like Dazzling Gleam bounces off. So I think that's a really cool aspect of it. It can be a really, really solid Pokemon in the right hands, and yeah, I definitely like the Clodsire pick, especially on a semi-stall balance team a lot, because it's going to stop that one big threat that you need something for that maybe Clog couldn't do otherwise. You get that plus something else, and you got a pretty good defensive core there. But yeah, that's basically going to be the replies to this tweet. There were some really cool ones. There were some ones you expected, but then there were some really cool ones that I didn't even think about, like the Tera fighting Lycanroc, or Tera Psychic Lele. I didn't think of that really at all. And yeah, it's cool to see how the mechanic is working out. Let me know what you guys think, what your favorite Tera captains are, and again, go ahead and drop in the comments below some more Twitter questions that you would like to see other Draft League players, elaborate on and give their opinions on, and obviously me dissect said opinions and things like that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Sub if you're new. See you in the next one. Later.